In today's video, we're going to have a look at Google Analytics 4 standard reporting interface. To start with, let's have a look at Universal Analytics versus GA4 and how the reporting interfaces differ. On the left, you'll see Universal Analytics 4, and on the right, we have GA4. Now, straight off the bat, they probably look very similar, but as we dig into the reports, you'll start to see the differences. Both of them have this home screen, which is just an overview of what's happening and some real-time reporting. But then we can dig deeper into the reports section. So in Universal Analytics, we have reports sorted by real-time, audience, acquisition, behavior, and conversions. And in GA4, we need to click into the Reports tab, and then we'll see lifecycle reports sorted by acquisition, engagement, monetization, and retention, somewhat modeled on like a marketing lifecycle flow. And then we've got our user reports, which is demographic and tech reports. Now you'll notice when I expand each of these, there's basically only 3 to 4 reports in each section. Now, if we have a look at Universal Analytics, the age-old problem was that basically there were too many reports and you have multiple levels of reports, and people would just jump in here and get so confused and scared and not know where anything was that it just become a nightmare to find exactly what they were looking for. So we can see there's dozens and dozens of reports under each tab, whereas GA4 standard reports are quite basic and limited, but the idea is that you create your own ports, either by customizing these or creating explorations or even Looker Studio reports. Let's go through the reporting interface and go through the standard reports one by one. When you first log into GA4, you'll get the snapshots overview, which is basically a series of tabs that Google thinks are probably the most important things that are happening on your website at the moment. It's an overview of reports that you can find deeper within the reporting structure. And you'll also see some insights type of reports here, which are AI based or AI generated. So you can see some kind of insights that are happening, user spikes, sources changing, and all these kind of insights that may or may not be useful. The next report is the real-time report. Now you might be familiar with the real-time report from Universal Analytics. The main change is that the real-time report in GA4 is for 30 minutes, whereas the real-time report in Universal Analytics only covered the last 5 minutes. We also get this nice graphical upgrade. We've got the interface, an overlay, like a geographical map overlay, so you can see where traffic is coming from and blipping in real time. And then we can see it broken down by user source, audiences, and content and conversions. Now you can change some of these reports. You can see little arrows where the dimensions are changeable, but you are still quite limited in what's presented. One thing that's kind of cool, maybe a little bit creepy, that's new in the real-time reports in GA4 is something called View User Snapshot. Now, what this is the actual activity of an individual on your website right now. So we've got someone from Bangalore in India, and they're browsing around the website quite a lot. They've looked at 23 pages. They've viewed their cart 7 times. They've added 4 items to their cart. They've viewed the cart 7 times, and they've actually removed an item for the cart. If we click here, we can see an actual timeline of how they've progressed through the website as well. So in this session, can only go as far back as half an hour. They've added to a cart. They've viewed their cart. They've viewed some more items. They've viewed their cart again. They're looking at promotions, scrolling through the website, adding to cart again, viewing more items. Now, if this was your website and you're an e-commerce store, hopefully you'd see this person checking out, finalizing that purchase. So that's something new and quite interesting. If you've got the time, you might be able to eke out some interesting insights by looking through individual users, but I suspect that there's probably a lot more work involved in that than will actually lead to any meaningful insights, but still kind of cool, especially if you start seeing things in here that you weren't expecting. If you've got any kind of error event checking or things like that, that may be interesting. The next series of reports are the lifecycle reports, and they each follow a very similar structure, where you have an overview report and then some detailed reports. So let's start with acquisition and have a look at the acquisition overview report. Now we're looking at data from the Google Merchandise Store account. It's real-time and live, and this is the store that the data is coming from. So it's their actual merchandise store, and they give us access to this account for learning and education. So we can see all the data is coming from that website, and we can see on the acquisition overview, users versus new users, users in the last 30 minutes and the top countries, their default channel grouping, which we can change to source platform, source medium, campaign, whatever you like, and sessions versus engaged sessions. So you can see it's pretty high level. It's not really that deep and meaningful, but it's just an overview. The next two reports in the acquisition section are the user acquisition, first user, and traffic acquisition. So basically what the difference is, this user acquisition report shows only data where the user is a first-time user to the website and how they got there. So this is first-time visitors to the website and what are their means of getting to the website. So their default channel grouping is Google's categorization. You can change this to source medium if you prefer, which is something you might be more familiar with. So we can see here the top driving source and medium for the Google Merchandise Store is Google itself, organic search traffic. In here we see a breakdown of new users, engaged sessions, event count, conversions, and even revenue. So we can see that even though organic is driving a lot of new users and engaged sessions, it's driven $55,000 in revenue, whereas direct has driven 144K. Now, in each of these reports, it's important to know that you can change date ranges. So let's look at the last 30 days of data, for example. You can compare date ranges, so month over month, year over year. And you can also compare different segments of traffic. We can build a comparison here. Let's say we want to compare how different countries perform. So let's include a dimension country. And let's look at United States, and let's apply that to the report. And now we'll be able to see how new users from the United States compare to users from all countries. So now you'll see the table is broken down. So we can see all new users, there's 20,000, and 7,657 of them came from the United States. Now we can build upon that as well. Let's add the second highest country, which is in this case India, and apply that to the report. And to simplify it, let's take out all users and just compare United States versus India. So we can see the blue line is United States, the orange line is India, and we can see that there's a lot more traffic coming from the United States, and it's a lot more volatile. And what might be also interesting to see is how those countries compare in terms of revenue. Let's have a look at the organic traffic, how organic compares. The United States organic traffic from Google search has driven 7,657 new users, whereas India, we have 4,001. However, let's have a look at the differences in revenue. Those 7,657 users from United States resulted in $54,000, almost $55,000 in revenue, whereas the 4,000 new users from India drove $172 in revenue. Now there may be all different reasons for that. Maybe more people from India are using the merchandise store in terms of education because they do provide this demo analytics account. Or perhaps it's just that United States is more likely to buy Google merchandise. Now it's important to note that unless we clear these comparison segments, they will stay there for each report that we go to. So let's continue to all traffic acquisition, not just new users. And you'll see that again, we've loaded in those two segments. Let's get rid of those. And then it'll default back to all users. So again, similar, the data is presented in a table. We can add a secondary dimension. So we can have a look at perhaps organic search and country this way. So you can see here the top two the top channels are coming through there. Perhaps another secondary dimension you might find interesting is something like device. And imagine we just wanted to filter for organic traffic. We can actually just type that in here. And now we can see for organic search, organic social, organic video. If we wanted to further refine that, we can type in organic search here. We can see that we have now just organic search in this table and our device categories. So now we can have a look at how traffic from organic search performs depending on which device they're using. And in this case, desktop is driving the highest amount of revenue. Next up are the engagement reports. Now this is how people are interacting with your website or your app. Again, we see engagement overview. We can see engagement time, engaged sessions per user, and average engagement time. We can see total views and event count, and we see our top events and our top views. This will show us the top events tracked on our website, and if you recall, everything a user can do in GA4 is tracked as an event. You can see in the case of the Google Merchandise Store, the top event appears to be view promotion. Now I think the reason for that is they have this scrolling carousel of promotions on the homepage, and perhaps it's triggering an event each time that goes through. Next, view item list and page views, user engagement, page scrolls, viewing items, session starts, etc., etc. The next report is conversions. So again, the conversions are the events that we've marked as being most important for our website. And in this case, the top performing conversions for the Google Merchandise Store are predicted top spenders, first visits, add payment info, begin checkout, and purchase. So being an e-commerce store, things like beginning checkout, adding to cart, adding payment, and purchasing are very critically important to monitor. The next report is pages and screens. So what are the most viewed pages or screens if you're in an app? Now, because of the way this report works, it can be difficult to review. The reason for that is because it uses page titles as the dimension. Now, not every website uses page titles well, so you can change this to page path and screen class. Page path is probably the one you want to use if you're looking for the URL and you're more familiar with Universal Analytics. It'll show you the actual URL there on the website. So as usual, the / is your home page, and then you can see the URL of each page. The next reporting section is monetization, and this is primarily for e-commerce websites and websites that sell ad space. Now, because the Google Merchandise Store is an e-commerce site, we can see data in the monetization overview report. We've got total revenue, e-commerce revenue. So the only way this website is driving revenue is from e-commerce. And then we can see things like top products and average revenue per user. We can see total purchases versus first-time purchases. And then if we dig into the e-commerce purchases report, this is a more in-depth e-commerce report. We can filter by item name, item category, item brand, item ID, and we can see how each is performing. So we can see the new items are performing best, followed by men's unisex, sale. We can see revenue for each, total number of purchases for each. So these reports are quite useful for e-commerce stores. The retention reports show new versus returning users. There is some debate on how accurate and useful these are, with issues around cookies and certain browsers and apps not allowing for reliable tracking, but it's there, and if it's useful to you, then great. Now, the last two reports are breakdowns of our user demographics and technology. So we can see the demographics overview, geography, a deeper dive into users by city. So you can do new users versus returning users, breakdown by gender, their interests, their ages, and languages. If we go into demographic details report, we'll get that familiar graph and table layout where we can start manipulating the data to see exactly what we want to see. So we can start getting a breakdown of potentially age plus gender, And then we can see if we want to do some very targeted advertising buys, we could probably sort this by total revenue. So we can see for the last 30 days, female users aged 18 to 24 have resulted in the highest total revenue. And lastly, in the standard reports overview are the tech reports. This is the technology people are using to access the site. Now, this first report here, users by platform, you can see it's 100% web. And the reason for that is the Google Merchandise Store is 100% web-based. It's not an app. Whereas if you're in a Google Analytics 4 account that has both web and app data streams, you'll see the breakdown of users by platform across your platforms that you are tracking. Again, we go into the tech details and we'll get the chart and table-based data that we can manipulate. And then we can see a breakdown of revenue by browser, by OS, by device model, by device category. So these are the top level reports that are available in Google Analytics for standard reporting. Now again, I want to make it absolutely clear that these are very top level reports, especially in comparison to some of the deeper dive reports that you could get in Universal Analytics. But the whole idea with GA4 is that you create your own reports based on what's important to you. And there's basically 3 ways to do that. The first way you can customize these reports is by editing them, effectively make a copy of them, and change what is included. You can change the graphs at the top, you can add filters, and you can save them into this menu list. So you can have a report customized the way you want it and saved in here. The second way is by using exploration reports, which we'll look at in the next video. And the third way is by exporting your data into Looker Studio, where you can create 100% custom reports from multiple data sources such as Google Ads, Facebook Ads, Google Analytics, or pretty much any other data source you can think of, even static Google Sheets. So if you have any questions or comments about this video, feel free to ask. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.